Madam Mayor,
Pro Tem? Yes.
I recommend that we approve the reports and recommendations of the city manager and the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I am going to pull item number 1 for separate consideration. This is an item that was approved in the schedule of fees at our last council meeting and was voted and unanimously approved by the council to be in effect on July 1st, 2018. I will say, from my perspective, I regret that I was not more clear about the what this was bringing forward in terms of the $4.95 fee for the some of the online processing of payment. After consideration and a lot of discussion with citizens, I feel like it is appropriate to postpone this implementation of this policy until January 1st, 2019. It is our goal and our strategic plan to be customer focused and to be financially responsible with our resources. I still believe that that the citizens should not be asked to subsidize their neighbor's use of the convenience fee, but I feel that I have not communicated this policy correctly or accurately, and I further feel that with the transitions that we're having with our utility billing system and the the natural sort of troubles that come with implementing that system, our staff is simply not available now to explain this to the number of calls that we have received. We're still in the process of getting bills out to people who have not received a bill, getting payments processed that have not been paid, dealing with late payments, and we just simply aren't ready to put this into action on July 1st. With that, I would like Mr. City Manager to ask you to better explain how this fee came about. This was based on our research, we've been allowing credit card and other kinds of payments at least since 2002. We all know that over the past 16 years, there's been a lot of advancements on online banking and various other technologies. So the use of that system has just ballooned, obviously, since 2002. So, Mr. City Manager, I'm going to ask you to make this policy more clear, and I'm going to ask Jordan Alana, our management analyst, also to come up and give a report about what the Audit and Finance Committee has asked for you to do. I know your report is not complete, so maybe, Jordan, I would start with you and then have the city manager better explain how this fee applies and what it does not apply to.
Mayor, members of the council, Jordan Alina, City Management Analyst. The Audit and Finance Committee has assigned me an audit for me to review all credit card fees paid by this, basically subsidized by the city. And so I believe it was officially assigned last Friday. Going to try to do this in a week and present a report to the Audit and Finance Committee probably next Monday if I can. That will look at basically over the last couple of years what fees the city has collected, and then kind of looking at the policy going forward. So if there's any other questions, but that's sort of the outlines of the audit at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Jordan, just one question. In your scope of work, is there ability for you to possibly take a look at our negotiating practices with these credit cards, these facilities to get lower rates, better rates, no rates.
Yeah, I will actually look at the payment system that we've selected that's kind of precipitating this change, and to the best of my ability, try to explain that and how those fees came about. So,
Gotcha, thank you.
absolutely.
Thank you. Mr.
If I may.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So you're telling me you're not ready to be ready.
That's exactly right.
So why are you here?
I'm always here, every
I
day.
mean, are you here to tell us that the
I'm just
report
here-
will say something, but you don't know what it's going to say?
No, I'm just trying to give you as best as I can the outlines of the
Okay,
report.
so the policy that we have in this instance is not ours, right? This is a state policy.
It's actually, from my understanding, is the policy of the payment vendor,
That we have no control over
right?
because of state law.
As far as the amount of convenience fee, correct?
So what are you going to show me?
I'm going to try to lay out exactly how that decision was made, and so you guys have.
Something that we have no control over. Am I reading this right?
Some of what citizens have asked for is an audit of they're requiring some validation that the number that we have communicated, which is nearly $500,000, they want verification that that is an accurate number. So part of the task that has been assigned to the management analyst is to review the past audited financial statements and provide us with those reports so that we can communicate to the community with confidence that the number that we are reporting is an audited number performed by our external auditor.
So we did this according to the system.
Correct.
We used the formula,
Correct.
and we came up with a number that was given to us by the city manager. Is that correct?
Yes.
But we want to say why we did this?
I believe so that the public will have, an understanding, and you as the council will have a better understanding and feel that the decision was come to properly and in the fullest light of
Okay.
public
Thank you.
discourse.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Jordan, would this be formally given to the Audit and Finance Committee as well?
That is correct, yes. The report will be first given to you. Upon your approval, that will be made a finalized report, which will also be posted online for the public to view.
And just so the audience knows, Councilwoman DeLucia is the chairperson, Councilman Roberson and myself are on the Audit and Finance Committee.
That is correct.
Any other questions?
Any more questions?
Okay. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, as you know, as we were preparing our budget for this year, we were trying to find every mechanism possible, not only to ensure financial sustainability in this current fiscal year, but for generations to come. As the mayor said, our research shows that since at least 2002, the City of Independence has been accepting credit card payments. You heard from your two lobbyists tonight, the credit card industry is no different. They're very well represented and they're highly regulated. We are not dictating what those credit card convenience fees are. Those are being dictated to us by the many multitude and plethora of credit card vendors out there. Over 40% of our customers in the city use that, but that means there's 60% of our customers that aren't using that mechanism to pay. So that means that we are subsidizing 40% of our users. We're trying as staff to make all those recommendations necessary to contain expenses and in particular contain our long-term rates for our utility customers. About $557,000 is the annual number that we're paying in credit card fees, all of which primarily comes from the utilities, all but about $50,000 because utilities are our most common payment mechanism with our 58,000 customers that we have. So what we're trying to do here is get more in line with our peer cities and find ways to contain those costs and avoid the city subsidizing those or having to build those into any future rate cases. I will tell you that in our debate about this, it was very important to us to make sure that there were still mechanisms and workarounds so that those who had a financial hardship or other reason for not wanting to pay these convenience fees still had an opportunity to do so. There are 3 different ways one can avoid paying these convenience fees. You can come on into City Hall or out to the Independence Utility Center, both of which have after-hours drop boxes. make a payment there. You can avoid that. You can pay directly from your bank account, either through online bill pay or automated bank draft. It's only, again, if you're using your credit card. And of course, you can mail in a check or payment to us as well, too. It's if you want to use that credit or debit card that you're going to incur that fee. $4.95, how was that determined? Again, it would be impractical for us to keep up with every nuance of every credit card if you're Capital One or Southwest or whatever it might be. So that represents an average transaction. We, of course, in the state of Missouri, we cannot profit because of the Hancock Amendment. These funds can only be used exclusively to offset that cost. We're not going to use them for operations or to make payroll or anything like that. This will go directly to our third-party credit card vendor to offset those convenience fees that the city's been incurring for the past 16 years at least. So that's a very brief, but I hope direct response about how we came about this, the rationale behind it, and how one could avoid paying the convenience fees if that's problematic.
Okay, thank you. Are there comments or questions? Yes. Councilman Doherty.
Thank you. You know, what's in your wallet, fly any airline, no blackout date, sponsorship of Olympics and major sporting events. These are costs the credit card companies have. They pass them on to the merchant, and they're then pass that on to the cost of the good that you buy. There's no such thing as no fee. I got my trash bill in the mail. I didn't pay attention to it. I have a $5.25 fee on a $100 trash bill because we pay with credit card, because they discount you if you pay it that way, charge you more if they send you a paper bill. So this is just the cost of doing business. Right now we're at 40% on cards, 60% on other. That number will go up as we become more of a, sadly, more of a cashless society. That should really be the cost of doing business. It shouldn't be a separate line item. It's just a cost of what it is. All those different fees, you know, I think the utilities do need to absorb those costs in the cost of operation. That's something that's going to be there. They can pay through that through, cuts and efficiencies, and then they could maybe negotiate a better payment arrangement with the third-party vendor. But it's just a cost of doing business that's going to be there. There is no such thing as free. If this is taken off, it didn't go away. It's still there. We still have to pay for that as a vendor. So it may not appear on the bill, but it'll still be there. Sadly, we do need to figure out a way to make it as low as possible.
Councilman Van Camp.
Thank you for that explanation, and we've all heard it, and we placed our vote on that based on what we knew. It's nothing new. I don't see a postponement being any better. We've covered it. I did mine, and is everybody here, and you talked to everybody here about it. And when we had our meetings, everybody, with the exception of our new member, said get leaner and meaner so that we can continue not to raise the rates. And I think this is an important part of it. And quite frankly, you can't have one part paying for the other part. It's just, I walked around my neighborhood and talked to my people, and each one that used a credit card said, I don't mind. Now, there's going to be those that do. I'm sure we've all heard from them. But I don't see any difference. I mean, you've done this since we've had our meeting last at the Drum Farm, and we all agreed to do this with the exception of our newest member. And this is the point, and this is why we do these things.
Yes, Councilman.
Well, it's unfortunate that this is happening at the same time we're having the problems with our new billing software and billing system. And unfortunately, that has, I think, accentuated the confusion and has caused even more problems because people aren't getting their bills on time, and you know, we're trying to work through the glitches and the problems with converting over to the new software, which I wish we had done a year ago. I know we've been working on it for several years, and it's been going on for several years, and it's just the perfect storm. Unfortunately, though, I think putting this off means that it's well over $500,000 for the year, which was built into the budget, and it means that $250,000 of cost is going to have to be added back into the budget if we're going to put it off until January. And so I think we need to swallow the bitter pill now and say this is what we're going to have to do, and putting it off means that it's going to create even more of a problem with the budget that we just passed. And so I would be in favor of not putting it off more than a month because of the billing issues right now, because that's creating part of the confusion. But I really think putting it off 6 months and incurring another $250,000 of cost to the city is not something we should do. It looks like from the numbers that there's over 22,500 customers that are using credit cards, according to my calculations. 40% of 56,000 customers. I don't know how many of those are industrial or commercial customers, probably a small fraction. But the fees that are incurred, for the most part, since they're set by the credit card company and we have nothing to say about them, this $4.95, $5 charge is basically an extra Starbucks for a lot of people that are paying by credit card, because they'll go through Starbucks and hold up their phone and pay by credit card on their phone. So it's like you said, it's just a cost of doing business. It's the cost of wanting to be convenient, and that's really unfortunate, but that's the cost the city has been incurring for these past number of years, and it's only going to get larger. And I think we have decided with passing the budget that we want to cut that expense, and we have to pass it on. It's one of those bitter pills.
Mr. City Manager, I'm not concerned about our citizens who can spend $5 at Starbucks every day. I'm concerned about those who I have talked to who a $5 expense is significant. And for various reasons, occasionally are do pay by debit card, or in rarer occasions by credit card. Two questions. I'm supporting the postponement in hopes that now that we've had an opportunity to better explain this, that people will immediately start transitioning towards another form of payment, realizing that if you use a credit card, your neighbor is subsidizing that fee, that cost that the city is absorbing. So I would encourage people to begin immediately, if you are utilizing a debit card or a credit card, to choose one of these alternate forms of payment. I think 6 months gives people ample opportunity to work with their bank or their financial institution and find and start making that transition. As we've all said tonight, transition can be difficult. People have their systems set up, and this would give them ample opportunity. I don't believe it's going to be $250,000 as people begin to better understand the impact that this is having on their city budget and their city services. That said, I would like to ask you, if this were to pass this evening, to postpone this for 6 months, how will you address that in the approved budget?
As I said, primarily all but, let's just use a full fiscal year because that's easier to keep straight. But if $500,000 of this is through the utilities, about $50,000 is in the general fund. We have excellent leadership in our departments, in those 3 utilities and through our budget office. We'll work to find savings as needed to manage, as we do. If we had some other catastrophe or other issue come up that required us to absorb a $250,000 hit, if that's the prerogative of the council, we'll absolutely manage through that. We do this. I would liken this, Mayor and Council, to last year when we needed to upgrade our municipal court system, which was an unbudgeted expense. That was a $350,000 hit to the general fund that was not anticipated. We couldn't imagine that system was going to give out the way it did. We managed around that. that's what we do. We find ways to manage through that, and we'll work to exercise our fiscal stewardship in this circumstance as well, too.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from the council?
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councilmember DeLucy.
Unfortunately, I think we caught a lot of people unaware because it was simply on the consent agenda, and it was the first time anyone had heard of $4.95. And I, too, take responsibility for not advertising it as well as I should have. Another thing, though, is different vendors choose different fees. So if this vendor is $4.95, another vendor may only be $2. And that was something I never considered when we were discussing what vendor are we going to use. So shame on me for not paying attention. I also found out that if I physically go to the utility building with my credit card and pay my utility bill with my credit card, the city is going to pick up that $4.95 fee. Whereas if I'm sitting in my house and I pick up the phone and I make a credit card payment over the telephone with the customer service line, I'm picking up that fee. So there's a lot of internal inconsistencies that I think we really should look at, so I am very much in favor of a 6-month postponement.
Any other comments or questions from the council? Okay, we have one speaker this evening who would like to address the council on the schedule of fees. That is David Whipple. Mr. Whipple, if you would come forward, state your name for the record. You will have 5 minutes. The clerk will keep the time at the dais. She will let you know when you have 1 minute remaining.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, councilmen and women, to allow me to share a few thoughts with you. And I want to express that I'm very much opposed to this attempt to add this additional cost on the citizens of Independence. I'm a longtime resident of the city of Independence. I'm also a small businessman. I'm an attorney. I have my office up on the square. And I look at this as being a situation where it strikes me that you're kind of missing the point of this whole situation. You're elected by the citizens. You represent the citizens of Independence. And I think one of your primary overriding objectives is to make sure that as far as the services that are provided to the citizens of this city, that there is some level of decent quality customer service with them. And as I look at what you're proposing, it strikes me that in this world of electronics that we're going into, that this is actually going the exact opposite. We're going to be fighting backwards against the stream in terms of where you're saying that you would rather have people come and write paper checks to involve the need for more human interaction, particularly in a situation which you find yourself in right now with this new implementation of the utility software program. I have been trying to get registered on into this new program for 2 or 3 weeks right now. I have called. And if you ever try to call customer service right now, all you're getting is a busy signal. And so there's no ability to communicate with somebody. If you go over to the actual the office, then you've got to stand in line. And what's happening here, and most of these entities with regards to paying online, the overriding benefit to them is that it's reducing the amount of manpower that you have to utilize, and with regards to this particular situation, it seems that you're going the opposite direction, and what's going to end up happening is you're going to have to hire more staff to be able to address the additional paperwork that's going to be required with regards to this. And as a result, and it seems like the only focus on this has just simply been the dollars and cents, as opposed to the what's really best for the citizens of this city, and it's just simply gone the wrong way. And contributing to this fact is another factor is that the city moved the utility office out to Eastern Independence. And so then if you're talking about you're wanting people to come physically in to pay, now you've got the people on the west side of Independence. It's a huge inconvenience, and some may not even have the ability for transportation to be able to make it to that point. And so, so it strikes me with regards to that, that this is simply not the way to go. As a small businessman, I started accepting credit cards 2 or 3 years ago. And one of the reasons I did it was because I was actually losing clients because clients wanted to pay by credit card. And in terms of them, some of them don't even have checking accounts. And so they wanted to pay by credit card. Asking them to go get cash was a problem. And it was a cost, as has been indicated by Councilman Doherty, as a cost of doing business. And it was an additional cost that I felt was a benefit that I was willing to incur because that it benefited the clients that I was representing and being able to provide me with better ability to serve my clients.
1 minute, Mr. Whipple.
Thank you. And I also indicate that, and it kind of, as Councilwoman DeLucci indicated, that this thing really blindsided a lot of people. And I think that's one of the things that's really upset a lot of the citizens, including myself, is it kind of looks like that this was something that was kind of snuck in, you know, to try to, let's pull this in, we're talking about money, and we'll get it, and maybe nobody will see it happen. And so I think it's something that is of great concern, that there wasn't a lot of public advance notice on it, and the ability to get input and comment from the citizens. And so I appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts with you at this time, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Whipple. I would move for approval of item number 1.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Huff,
Yes.
Perkins. Yes. Doherty.
Yes.
DeLucy.
Yes.
Robertson.
Yes.
Van Camp.
Yes.
Mayor Ware.
Yes. Item number 1 passes. This brings us to non-ordinance action item. We have 3 individuals who have requested to speak on this item. Madam City Clerk, will you please read the motion, and then we will ask the speakers to speak prior to the vote.
This motion is to amend the previously adopted ordinance number 18904 to include the following positions in Power and Light Department: Economic Planning and Rates Manager, Utility Project Development Manager, Environmental Health and Safety Environmental Program Supervisor, one of 2 existing safety and training specialist positions, GIS Supervisor, and 3 Engineer 3 positions under the Engineer Supervisor.
Thank you. Our first speaker is Andy Boatwright. If you would please come forward, state your name for the record, and you will have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. My name is Andy Boatwright. I'm the Deputy Director for Independence Power and Light. I'm also a citizen of this community and a resident. And I'm going to admit here that I'm in the unusual position of speaking as a citizen to you, although I'm informed obviously about what's happening at Power and Light. I've never done this before, to be honest with you. I've always spoken to city councils from a staff point of view. And I don't think the city manager would necessarily approve of my being up here right now, to be honest. But I think it's important for you to understand, from my perspective, what the impact of the loss of these positions is. The positions that have been unfunded in the coming fiscal year, 2018-19, at the last hour, without any prior communication between city council and staff, include the following persons. And I'm going to ask them to please stand if you're in the audience and remain standing. Planning and Rates Manager Randy Hughes. Project Development Manager Mark Rothmeyer. Environmental Program Supervisor Eric Holder. Engineer 3, Brent Gerling. Engineer 3, Bobby Bryant Fields. Engineer 3, Les Galloway. GIS Supervisor, John Keith. And 1 vacant, currently under recruitment, Safety and Training Specialist. Thank you. You may be seated. I appreciate that. The loss of these 8 positions will cause, at a minimum, the delay or suspension of the ongoing Generation Master Plan study, the delay or suspension of the ongoing cost of service rate study, any near-term hope of implementing advanced metering infrastructure, any hope of making Power and Light economically efficient and relevant in the next era of electric utility service. There will be no more community solar farms. There will be no thoughtfulness to the roadmap for increasing the efficiency of our generation and power supply portfolio. There will be no meaningful dialogue between the citizenry and staff in collaborating on the best way to make our rates more affordable and competitive. There will be no strategies developed for electric vehicle charging or for microgrids or for battery storage, which are very much part of our utility service model in the coming few years. As a matter of fact, if the thinking is that the utility will realize savings by cutting these key positions, the exact opposite is likely true. These position losses will create an organization that is a mere shell of its former self. We will likely spend a great deal more through contract services to support the utility. Let's talk about reinvesting into the electric system. We have literally invested hundreds of millions of dollars over decades back into our grid to ensure that our system is safe and highly reliable. We use tax-exempt bonds to finance these capital improvement projects. This is a very capital-intensive business, and bond financing is extremely important. We use this to preserve cash and prevent rate shock to our customers.
1 minute, Mr. Boatright.
It may become increasingly difficult to secure tax-exempt financing because this $150 million public power utility has no titled department director, and as of now, no one left to oversee a severely needed rate update and generation master plan, and a city council that makes decisions that are not in the best interest of the city. The bond rating agencies perform their due diligence, and they will take note of what's happening here in Independence, and it may have a devastating effect on our ability to secure low-interest financing. I will talk a little bit about safety and environmental compliance. Safety is a culture throughout the organization that involves a leadership team that facilitates that culture and empowers staff to collaborate on key policies and directly impact their workplace. There will be no facilitating of safety. That doesn't mean we're going to kill or injure anyone. Absolutely not. But there will be no consistency in the administration of safety or training. And safety is our highest priority. The elimination of the 3 engineering positions, the GIS position, will have a direct impact on line workers and their safety. And they ensure that all lines and designs are meeting the strict standards of safety, reliability, and long-term low-cost operations. The staffing cuts put forth by City Council are severely misdirected, and one has to wonder the real motivation for this at this stage of the process. City Council needs to be patient and wait for the results of the recommendations of the Generation Master Plan and the cost of service rate study, as it will become clear that there are meaningful, productive, thoughtful, and moral ways to cut costs. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Boatright. next speaker is Jason White.
Good evening. My name's Jason White. I live here in the community. I'll tell you, I was real surprised with Monday night's activities. At the end of the long budget process, we vote to eliminate 8 positions out of IPL, and I sort of pride myself on paying attention, and I couldn't recall that being discussed. We have a long budget process, and I dug around, couldn't find it on an agenda anywhere. And so I stepped back and I started asking some questions, and I asked people both on the record and off the record, and I said, where's the memo that looks at those job positions and defines what they do and says we don't need them anymore? Couldn't find anybody that had read such a memo. So I asked around and I said, well, is there any analysis on who's going to do the work of these guys after they're gone? Because somebody's got to do the work, and from Mr. Boatwright, apparently that hasn't been thought out yet, so I don't know who's going to do it. But from his testimony, nobody. So I sort of looked at what discussion had gone on, and somebody said, well, this complies with the management audit. And so I looked at that again, and you know what? It absolutely doesn't in the management audit say that. And if you don't agree with me, it's on our little indieenergy.org website. You can go and read it. It'll tell you about problems under old management, but it doesn't talk about eliminating those positions. There was discussion about saving $1 million. I was fascinated about that because just a few weeks ago, you all had a chance to save over $40 million by doing smart metering and an opt-out to make some of my neighbors happy. And you threw it away, $40 million worth of savings. And now you're saying, we got to save $1 million on the backs of those guys' jobs. You got a master plan coming out in a few weeks. And you're not going to wait to see what the master plan gives you advice for? So are we throwing that money down the drain as well, saying we didn't need those people to help us think through a complex industry and project ourselves downstream? Sounds like from Mr. Boatwright, he agreed with that. I was fascinated. So we have a power plant, and it doesn't make power. I mean, we get less than 3% of our power from our current power plant. That's part of the conversation going on right now. But the 8 jobs we're eliminating aren't even related with that. They're related with transmission and distribution. And so another head scratcher. So I asked, well, what do these folks do? And they're the experts on rates. Well, he just went through them. You got a rate study and you got this master plan, and we're telling the people that are the smart guys in the city staff that are helping make sure you get something worthwhile to help guide your thinking, we're telling them they're gone on July 1. That makes no sense whatsoever. I asked who knew this was coming, and I was really shocked because good process leads to good decisions. And nobody knew it was coming except very few city council members. It's a personnel issue that we didn't bother to engage with the personnel. I'll touch on that in a second. But next I want to talk about the charter. And I get it that there's some really weak lawyers around town that may say this isn't a charter violation, but I tracked down a couple of fairly eminent lawyers in town, and I said, because the council members knew very specifically who those individuals were because they were so specific in their titles, doesn't that challenge clearly the intent, if not the actuality of the charter? And they said, yeah, there's grounds to challenge that as a charter violation. The charter, in case you haven't read your history books, was put in place in this city because of the corruption, much of it around patronage. That patronage goes both ways, hiring people and firing people you don't happen to like. So I think there's an issue you need to engage with prior to finalizing this decision. There are several employees around this city right now that are concerned for their jobs because they witnessed this late-night massacre. And that leaves you potentially facing a brain drain of some real quality people. And that is a huge problem. And that's part of why we have a charter to give the city manager that ability to hire and fire, not the political process.
1 minute, Mr. White.
Hey, thank you. The big thing about it was the lack of class. And I think Mr. Boatwright hit that on the head, but really low class. I cannot imagine being at home and my phone ringing and saying, what's your job title? I think you just got fired and your family's going to have to figure out where they're going to pay the mortgage bills from some other mechanism in, 5 days? Low end, low class, far below what we're capable of doing as a community for the people that have committed their careers to work here to make my life and your life better. There are plenty of rumors out there as to why this happened, because you've given us no really good reason why you did it. And I'll be real blunt. Some people think it's election payback. Some people think it's problems with who worked for who in the past. Other people think we don't want smart people maybe giving us suggestions on things like smart meters. I don't know whether the rumors are true, because I can't nail them down. But I can tell you that if it was a good idea, it would survive the scrutiny of light and discussion, and you didn't give it that. So it's not a particularly good idea. I hope you will provide normal process, you will analyze those positions, you will provide public scrutiny, and you'll step away from this very, very poor decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Am I next?
Our final speaker is Lucy Young, who wishes to speak on IPL.
Thank you. My name is Lucy Young. I'm a resident since '92. Your business is not personnel. Your business is of the people. Your business is to make sure that the rates are low, that the business of Independence is run like a business, and that the budget comes under and on time every year. You were forced into a vote by charter. Oddly enough, you were forced into the same vote for the health department, and you didn't worry about the morals then. There were employees that were given phone calls at the last minute to say, gee, I think your jobs have been eliminated. Don't talk to me about morals, talk to me about money. That's the man that has to report about the employees. That's the personnel. You guys are about reporting to me. I'm your boss. You owe 51% of this city to do your very best. Our rates are higher than any other Metro citizen has to pay that is out of the Independence district. I worked for KCP&L when they absorbed Aquila. There were few employees that retired prior to that absorption. But when they came together, I was the engineering secretary. Did I see hardship? Yes. Did I see people lose their jobs? Yes. Were they given opportunities to take early retirement? Yes. I'm sorry that some of these people are not going to have that opportunity, but you owe me, the ratepayer, to bring down the rates. You owe me, the widow, to bring down the rates. You owe me, the Social Security recipient, to bring down the rates. You can't do so unless you cut personnel. We won't bring in business unless we take down the rates. You've said yourselves that you need to carve out special rates for utility. Well, I'm sorry. You need to take the ratepayer into consideration first. We're tired of seeing it, and we know when this rate study comes in, they're not going to magnanimously say to us, oh, you need to lower their rates. No, they're going to say, you're going to need a rate increase because it always needs a rate increase. As far as the studies go, we managed to find studies for everything else in this town. And perhaps the hierarchy in that department is going to have to be adjusted just as it was at KCP&L. But I'm here from experience to tell you that KCP&L thrived and made money for their trustees. I'm asking you as a citizen to make our rates lower. And if it takes letting go some employees to do so, be it. Perhaps they will consider a reduction in their salaries and help instead. Perhaps that's a negotiation that could be had with the city manager at a later time. As you've taken the retirement benefits from employees that haven't even been hired yet, when July 1, those new employees will have to pay 100% of their retirement benefits, perhaps you should talk to negotiate some of these higher fat, bacon, barrel pork loaded salaries and bring them down so people like myself don't have to sweat it every month, keeping the windows open because we can't afford to run our utilities at 72 degrees like we do here at City Hall. Thank you.
That concludes our speakers. Madam City Clerk, will you please read the action item?
Motion to amend previously adopted ordinance number 18904 to include the following positions in the Power and Light Department: Economic Planning and Rates Manager, Utility Project Development Manager, Environmental Health and Safety, Environmental Program Supervisor, one of 2 existing Safety and Training Specialist positions, GIS Supervisor, and 3 Engineer 3 positions under the Engineer Supervisor.
Comments or questions from the council?
Madam Mayor,
Councilmember DeLucy.
I'm the one who asked that we revisit this. And I would like the council to consider putting these positions back in our budget, which was balanced before the budget was amended. These people who stood are employees of this city, and it's the city manager's job to deal with employees. It is a charter violation for this council to direct that city manager to hire or fire anyone. And what this council did 1 week ago violated that charter, 2.15 in particular. If this council wants to save rates, which I agree that we should definitely look at saving rates, absolutely, then what we could have done was say, Mr. City Manager, we want you to cut $1 million out of this budget. But we didn't do that. We said, Mr. City Manager, we want you to save $1 million by eliminating these positions. By doing that, we violated the charter. Without any study, without any discussion, I had questions. I was pretty much laughed at with my questions. Mr. Roberson, Dr. Roberson had questions. We were blindsided. We had no knowledge that this was going to be discussed. We had repeated meetings on the budget. This was never discussed. The people that we got rid of last week worked on the cost of service study, the master plan, solar RFPs, which are coming in, when? In a week. Lake City service analysis and negotiations. They were oversighting the Missouri City power plant demolition, which is costing this city $11 million. They are looking at the oversight of the IPL control room renovation, which is costing this city $1.5 million. They are members of evaluation committees for all kinds of studies. They are reporting to the federal government on OSHA, on safety, on monitoring of ash ponds, and we don't care. We're going to save $1 million by cutting these 8 positions. We're rebuilding transmission lines, but we don't have anybody to do it anymore. To not put these positions back into our budget is going to ratify a charter violation that we committed last week when we voted to amend the proposed budget by eliminating these positions in the Power and Light Department. This charter clearly states this council may not tell that man who to hire or who to fire, and that's what we did. We have ignored the charter. We have violated the charter. We have wrongfully terminated 7 employees. And I'm sure there's lots of lawyers looking out there saying, I hope they don't fix it. I hope I have a lawsuit representing these people against this council. We have a generational master plan that's coming in this summer. We have a rate study coming in the fall. Why are we bothering? We can ignore the charter. We'll make motions because you know what? We have 4 votes. We can then make decisions, pass ordinances based on no information at all. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Are there any more comments? Are there any further comments or questions from the council? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Huff, Perkins,
Pass.
Doherty,
No.
DeLucy,
Yes.
Robertson,
Yes.
Van Camp,
No,
Mayor Weir,
Yes.
Councilmember Perkins.
Pass. Yes.
Okay, our next motion is to rescind previously adopted resolution number 6339. We have one individual who would like to speak on this prior to the vote. Jack Looney, if you would please come forward.
I want to thank you, Honorable Mayor and Honorable Council members, for allowing me to speak. You hear me okay?
Yes, thanks, Jack.
Okay. Here this evening to talk about the proposed dismissal of Garland Land from the Public Utility Advisory Board. I myself am a member of that advisory board, and I'd like to state at this time, these comments I'm making this evening are those of mine. I did not have time to counsel the rest of the members, and so these, should someone disagree, they're not their comments, they're mine. But I've been on the Utility Advisory Board shortly after I retired, over 4 decades with the Power and Light Department. Been on the Utility Board for over 5 years. And much of those years I spent sharing those hours of discussion and thought with Mr. Land. I opened up my computer yesterday morning to look at the council agenda and was actually concerned that I saw this action on the council agenda, which prompted me to seek out being able to communicate with you and be here this evening. Garland Land, somewhat of a unique individual, and by unique I mean he's committed to our board. He's committed and passionate about controlling costs for our underprivileged, our people that are having trouble just making day-to-day expenses. For the poor, for the elderly, they have a champion, and that's with Mr. Land. So many meetings that we have sat and looked at rate change, proposed new, amendments to rates, changes to rates. Land has always been there, always campaigning for these people that I just mentioned. Very admirable place to be. Always count on him I've always been able to count on him as a board member to be sure those people are thought about and their concerns are brought to the table during discussion. As a matter of fact, he kind of echoes a representative or a voice for the poor, if you will, at our board level. He's very instrumental in establishing 2 utility assistant budgets so that there are, a lot of folks may not know, but there are public assistant programs out there that the needy folks, the retirement folks, can use to see that they've got air conditioning in the summer and, I got that right, and heating in the winter. Okay. During the past few months, Garland brought it to our attention that the economics, the review of the utilities is difficult with the information that had been used for years, and pioneered new forms. We call them dashboards, but they're forms that make the operation expenses of each of these utilities much more easier to understand. And he worked one-on-one with the various utility directors, and now we have a form that doesn't require much input at all at our monthly meetings. The information there, it's easy to read, and it's largely due to Mr. Land's endeavors. And so I appreciate that aspect. More recently, Mr. Land, it's going to sound like none of the other board members do anything, but Mr. Mr. Land brought to our attention that the charter calls for rules. Now, the Board of Public Utilities, I didn't look it up, it's been around for a long time, but we have no rules for operation of the meeting. Through his endeavors, actually I should be fair, it's through all the board members' endeavors, but I know Garland spent hours, not at the meeting necessarily, but at home, endeavoring to get a procedural manual, if you will, for the operations of the utility and comply with the requirements that are stipulated in the ordinance or in the charter. Last month we were able to approve that document, and I'm very, very proud to say that we now have a document that probably should have been around years ago, but due to his tenacity, I should say, we now have a document that we can rely on for monthly procedures.
1 minute, Mr. Looney.
Yes, thank you. I think I've shared about all I can. I've tried to demonstrate what kind of a person we're talking about, one that's committed, one that has a love for his citizenry, for a person that is devoted. And again, if there's a place to be devoted, it's with our elderly. It's with our people that are struggling. And I'm just glad that he's there to champion for them. And I ask of you, in your consideration, to think about those things. I think he's a worthwhile board member. We have a very sound board at the moment and a very effective board. As was mentioned in a previous discussion, we've got some very big things ahead of the City of Independence that we hope to be able to advise or help or have discussion with council on regarding power production. Big issue for the city, very big, coming up. The best players you can place at the board level would be encouraged. Now, I'm going to go back and take my seat, that you all have a discussion what's necessary, and we'll be hopeful in the outcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Looney. Thank you for your service to the city and for your continued service on the PUAB. Okay, Madam City Clerk, will you please read the...
Mayor,
Yes?
I'd like to move to postpone indefinitely.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Here,
Yes?
down here. Madam Mayor, it's not about Garland Land. And I appreciate the fact that he's helping the elderly pay a high utility bill. Maybe his endeavors would be better served if he figures a way to get them lowered. To me, that whole board has failed us. As we heard from someone here tonight, why we have bad management. It was all the old management. So let's keep the old management, and we're going to promise you low rates in the future. We have study after study that says we have a management problem, yet we failed to address it. We have people on that advisory board that wants to publicly criticize decisions of the council. We are the decider, they're advisory only. They spent a year and a half trying to recommend a $2 million oversight contract, and they, to the vote, they said, oh, never mind, the staff can do it. That was a failure. Our rates, where have they been all these years in trying to figure out why our rates are high and how to get the management worked out? If they want to advise us on something, advise us how to lower the rates. To me, that whole board is flawed because we've not seen leadership to lower the rates. If the cuts would have come through, every single ratepayer would have got a check for $17. Once AMI would be, it would be $53, just on those two things alone. If you want lower rates, you have to listen to the studies that say we have a management problem. It doesn't say we have too many linemen. It doesn't say we have too many poles or bucket trucks. It says we got management problems. You buy the same raw material, you make the same product, yet we're higher than a for-profit company, and we have to ask ourselves why. Somebody has got to make solid decisions. The charter says we gotta run it like a business, not a charity, and we've gotta get in there and figure out where the problem is. And just like Sprint and other places, or KCP&L was cited by the lady who was up a minute ago, we've got to take some decisions and clean out some excessive management, let people combine jobs, fill in back spaces, and lower the rates. So that's my thought on this.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Councilman.
to continue that thought, I would direct our city manager or strongly encourage our city manager. I think you hear the thoughts of this council, that we take a strong look at our administrative side or management side from top to bottom. I know we have some studies that are coming forth that in this next 12-month cycle, we will be sitting right here discussing these things again, and we take a strong look at what we do to make this meaner and a little bit leaner and more effective and efficient. We've done that in several different departments, and I appreciate your leadership on that. This is one area that that we need to be very competitive in the future, which changes yearly, daily almost in this industry, to take a strong look at that and how we can make these implementations happen as Councilman Doherty has suggested.
Madam Mayor?
Councilman.
I would just like to say that my schedule oftentimes allows me to attend the PUAB meetings, and I have only seen very dedicated, professionally led meetings, very good interrelationship between the staff and the PUAB board. And we're talking hours of work these people do. And this council just appointed Mr. Land a week ago. And the only thing that's happened from last week to this week is I attended a PUAB board. And you know who was there? Garland Land. You know who engaged with the staff? Garland Land. You know who was a big proponent of the city itself? Garland Land. There is nothing this gentleman has done other than give of himself to the betterment of this city. And for us to sit here and say we don't want it anymore makes no sense to me at all. He is a valuable asset to us, and I thank him publicly for serving on that board. Thank you.
Yes, Councilman.
When I saw this resolution over the weekend, I racked my brain to think about the reasons why the council would want to remove him after we just put him or renewed his term on there. He's been on there for at least one term. As I've searched some of the Facebook pages and some of the Facebook pages that I see or visit once in a while, there are some negative things on a couple Facebook pages that are very negative under Garland's email. And so I called him and I asked him, and he had never seen those pages. He did not put those pages on Facebook. Somebody else did with his email address. And that's going on, unfortunately, all the time. Garland is a lay minister. He said he has never posted anything negative about the council or any member of the city council. I've known Garland for a lot of years. His father cut my hair when I was a little boy, 5 years old, in Inglewood. His father had a barbershop. So I've known Garland most of his life. He's a quality individual. I have no reason not to believe him. I believe that he hasn't ever seen some of these pages or ever posted it. So I don't think there's any basis as far as character with Garland. I trust him. He's been a quality individual and a staunch member of our committee. Thank you, Mayor.
There is a motion and a second to postpone the motion indefinitely. Madam City Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Can I have a question answered first, ma'am?
Yes.
If we postpone this indefinitely, does that mean in order for it to be brought back up again, there has to be notice that it's being brought back up? Or can someone in councilperson comments simply say, I want to remove him?
Madam City Clerk?
I'm not aware of any rule for that, but I'm not sure. I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I could look real quick, but I'm not aware of any rule there is for that.
Seriously?
Postponing indefinitely would kill the bill.
Yes.
Okay.
Will
thank
kill the
you.
motion,
Yes.
but I don't think there's a restriction on bringing it up again.
There never is. You can bring a new one up.
Go down, Councilmember comments.
Well,
Okay.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll on the motion to postpone indefinitely.
Councilmembers Huff,
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Doherty.
Yes.
DeLucy,
Yes.
Robertson.
Yes.
Van Camp,
Yes.
Mayor Ware.
Yes. Motion passes. Do we have to vote, then we don't vote on this motion, correct?
Yeah, the motion to repeal the resolution has been
Okay.
postponed indefinitely.
I'm going to make a comment. I hate this process that the council brings citizen volunteers up for vote at public meetings. We have had multiple opportunities to develop a fair process to make appointments to our boards and commissions. And this council has not been able to come to agreement on that. Despite multiple discussions, we have not agreed on a process. I am not going to be voting on appointments in public meetings to put people on boards and commissions, to take people off of boards and commissions. So I recommend that this council come to an agreement about how we are going to handle this process in the future. Thank you. Any other council member comments this evening? Mr. City Manager,
Nothing tonight, thank you.
we are adjourned.